Hello, and welcome to our webinar series on the 8 professional competencies for preventing drug misuse among college students. I'm Rich Lucy, Senior Prevention Program Manager in the Drug Enforcement Administration's Community Outreach and Prevention Support section. DEA is pleased to be part of this project to highlight the skills necessary for coordinating comprehensive campus efforts to prevent drug use. While we have made significant progress with these issues over recent decades, much more remains to be done. The foundation for this webinar series is a publication prepared by Dr. David Anderson, Professor Emeritus of Education and Human Development at George Mason University. The document was produced with funding from the Mid-America Prevention Technology Transfer Center, which is funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. DEA is pleased to continue its partnership and collaboration with SAMHSA and its Center for Substance Abuse Prevention. Over the course of these 8 webinars, we take a deeper dive into each of the core competencies that are designed to promote enhanced professional skills and ultimately affect college students' decisions surrounding drugs and alcohol. This 8th and final episode focuses on communication and advocacy. This webinar examines, among other things, the importance of clear and concise communications with various audiences, as well as monitoring messaging and outcomes. This core competency also places attention on campaign development, student involvement, and varied approaches including the use of marketing, persuasion, communications science, technology, and communications and marketing specialists. Being able to clearly communicate your prevention program's mission, goals, and objectives connects to the ability to promote the need for safe and healthy campus environments, engagement of key constituencies, and understanding and support of prevention efforts by administrators and campus leaders. It's our hope you and your campus benefit from the information being shared in this webinar. We think you'll find many ways to put the insights and contents to good use. With that, it's my pleasure to turn over today's episode to our host, Dr. David Anderson.
Thanks very much, Rich, for that very kind introduction. And thank you to you and your colleagues at the Drug Enforcement Administration for all of your good work with prevention of drug misuse among college students and among the general populace of our country. You know, we've made a lot of progress with drug and alcohol misuse on college campuses over the last few decades. We have a long ways to go. And that's where this resource in this webinar series fits in. When we developed this new resource, the guide to the 8 professional competencies for higher education substance abuse prevention, available at www.preventioncompetencies.org, our aim was to be aspirational and identify what is it that we need to do, what sort of professional skills, knowledge, applications are appropriate for campus professionals and their colleagues on the campus to be most effective and most efficient with making a difference among our college students. To accomplish this resource, we convened an advisory group of 5 experts from around the country. 2 of them are here today. We've decided to do this webinar series to help bring to life each of these 8 competencies. And this session is the last of the 8. This is the last element. It's communication and advocacy. And we have Dr. Tom Hall, who's director of the Orange County Drug-Free Office in Florida. And we have Susie Bruce, who directs the Gordy Center based at the University of Virginia. So welcome, Tom, and welcome, Susie.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
So let's just get started. Susie, let me just kick off with you in terms of any background. You know, you've been working with drugs and alcohol for quite some time. Prevention, I should say. And so with communication and advocacy, can you talk a little bit about your background and how that fits into this topic for our webinar today?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've worked in substance misuse prevention in higher ed for 30 years. For the past 20 plus years, I've directed the Apple Training Institutes with grant funding from the National Collegiate Athletics Association. My work Relating to the advocacy sphere, really is among, with emerging adults, includes like, I'm a faculty affiliate of Youth Next, which is the Center to Promote Effective Youth Development here at the University of Virginia. I'm a member of the Virginia Alcoholic Beverage Control Authority's Regulatory Reform Work Group, where we're looking at all our policies. And I'm also on the Step Up Bystander Intervention Program's Executive Board and the Responsibility.org Education Advisory Board. And the Gordy Center's mission is to end hazing and substance misuse among high school and college students nationwide. And we're named after Gordy Bailey, who died in 2004 of alcohol overdose related to fraternity hazing at the University of Colorado Boulder.
Very good. And I know we're going to hear some more examples as we get into this today and some of those specifics from the Gordy Center and your various work. Tom, your background, I know you worked on college campuses, you're in government now, and other roles. A little bit about your background tied into communication and advocacy.
Yes, so I started my work back in 1993 and doing hospital care for substance use, mental health. And then from there, I had a private practice. In 2000, I joined higher ed, thinking that was just going to be an easy piece, kind of roll into retirement. And I found out it was quite different. I worked on a dry campus, and I learned quickly it was humid, and so there were lots of alcohol and drug problems there that required innovation. And so that's how I got into this field. And then from there, I was recruited to work at a university that had an even a much larger population. And so based on that, I became very well read in the research and the literature around substance use prevention, intervention, treatment, and lastly, recovery in the past 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And I know we're going to hear some examples from you. And that's our intent with this webinar series and this topic in particular, helping to bring to life the competencies as a whole. When the two of you and the other three on the advisory group, when we were building this guide, we were trying to organize, what are the core areas, and we came up with 8, and we decided, how do we organize it? And we organized it around a health enhancing environment. That's what we wanted for our campuses, for the environment there, and for our students. And we came up with one of the topics. Again, our topic for today is communication and advocacy. So why did we come up with that? And so Tom, I'll start with you. Can you speak to why communication and advocacy is central? Is one of the 8 central areas for our professional competencies for campus prevention folks?
Sure. So, I left out the fact that in 2019, I transitioned from higher ed into government as a political appointee. So my communication advocacy took on even a more pointed role. I became much more aware as an appointee how important it was to communicate clearly and make sure my advocacy was on the same page as my boss, the mayor. And so for me, this journey has been about learning all the things I didn't know when I started out as a young professional. I wanted to kind of save the world, and I have a social work background. And within the field of social work, we look at the person and environment, so you don't when you're looking at behavior change, you look at the total environment, not just one aspect of that. And then I went on in my doctorate work in sociology. Was much more of a macro focus and looking at how communities change as opposed to individuals. And so communication advocacy is so central to change. Nothing changes without some type of communication, and advocacy is an essential part of communication. You have to be persuasive. And the more persuasive you are, then the more likely change will come. And, you know, one of the things we know about change, the trans-theoretical theory, is people change when they see a need to change, you know. So that's a whole notion that there's pre-contemplation and contemplation, preparation to action. You know, those are, you know, that's the kind of, that's how change occurs, ideally in the laboratory, or at least in our theoretical framework. But in the real world setting, you may find people that are on board with, they're immediately ready to change. And then there's people who are pre-contemplative in the same agency, sometimes even in the same office. And so the communication advocacy part is, how do you identify the best strategies to move each of those persons or departments along the continuum of the change you're advocating for? And so, you know, I consider myself a change agent. And as a change agent, you know, I have some mandates. My current role in Orange County is I advise the mayor on all things drug policy and intervention and treatment. And so that's a so my advocacy work is, you know, based on best practices in the literature and based on, you know, what we know from other communities. But I have to be very mindful that my advocacy is in keeping with what the electorate wants as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, and there's examples. So I can, you know, I can professionally and I can personally say embrace harm reduction. And I'm just going to pick one, let's say safe injecting sites or needle exchange. So, you know, that may be something that I think is a good idea. But when I look at my community, there's, you know, there may not be the support for that I think there should be. And so there's a decision to be made at that point. And, and, you know, in this case, I think it's important to recognize that just because I think something is worth advocating for, it doesn't mean it's best to happen in that setting. And so for me, when I started out, I was hired because of my substance use treatment background, and I thought I had a blank check. And so the NIAAA 2002 put out these wonderful guidelines for what campuses should do. And so I just set about advocating, well, let's do this. This is what they said need to be done. Nobody, and I knew you at this time, David, and you didn't cue me in to the competency of how do you work with multiple audiences. And so I found myself at odds with the administration many, many times. And, you know, I was very fortunate that there must have been some redeeming quality there, because they, you know, I worked in higher ed for 18 years, but probably about 16 of those years I was making trouble for somebody.
Yeah, so I want to come back to the multiple audiences later, and I have a couple other follow-ons. I want to get Susie's take on the same question. Where does this competency area, why does it fit? How does it fit?
Yeah, and I love that Tom really focused on that advocacy part, because I think I'm going to speak a little more on the communication piece of that.
Good.
You know, and I was drawn to that because, you know, without good communication, you can have great programs, all these wonderful strategies, but no one will know about them. So that's why it's very important in this model. And, you know, if you're not engaging with students who are, as we're looking higher, those are primarily the majority of who we're targeting our messages for. If you're not engaging with them throughout program development, you might find that you have completely missed the mark with your audience. And as an example, many years ago, the 40 Center created a wallet card to provide education on alcohol serving sizes. So a little of the advocacy of, like, if you don't know what a standard drink is, you know, you can't make good decisions about how much you're drinking. The signs of alcohol overdose, what are some harm reduction strategies? So we conducted focus groups with students, and here's an example of the card. So it sort of folds up, will fit in your wallet. It's like credit card size. So we've got lots of information on it, but what they told us was our order was not their order. They would put this, the standard drink, they're like, that is going to get our attention. You have to put that on the back. So if that's not on the back, we're not going to pick it up. It's just not going to be interesting. But this will get our attention if we just happen to walk by. And we're like, okay, then. I mean, they encouraged us to move it. They said it would get their attention. So we listened to them. We made that change. Our previous student research had found that one of the top reasons students don't call for help when a peer is significantly impaired was because they were like, I wasn't sure they really needed the help. And, it makes sense. They're like, well, I don't want to call 911 if they're actually fine. So we had a team of system and engineering students who worked with our ADAPT peer educators, and they came up with the PUBS signs of alcohol overdose. So it's puking while passed out, unresponsive, breathing is noisy, slow, shallow, or stopped, and skin is blue, cold, or clammy. So that spells PUBS. And they created this because we wanted a checklist so students would know how to identify an emergency and they would feel compelled to take action and call 911. Our previous checklist had 6 signs of overdose. And honestly, students were like, 6 is too many. We'll remember 4, but not 6. We're like, again, you meet students where they are. It was funny, they were actually a little nervous when they presented PUBS to us because they're like, I mean, it's talking about alcohol. I'm like, but are you going to remember it? Again, going back to communication, they're like, well, totally remember PUBS. So we're like, we're going to go with it. It's all about how do you reach that audience? How is it catchy? Is it memorable? We'd rather that they remember this information when they need it. And then beyond that, one of our peer educators said, for people with darker skin, it can be hard to tell if their skin is turning blue. But if you check their lips and their nail beds, you can tell if they're getting pale. And we're like, that's an amazing piece of information. And it showed the importance of having really diverse representation in our peer education group. And we include that information like in the video that we have, like when we talk about it. We, of course, checked with medical professionals to ensure the 4 signs were the most frequent, easily identifiable indicators of overdose. So PUBS not only teaches the signs of overdose, again, it's that communication. It is, what did students not know? How can we present this in a clear, concise, medically accurate way? It provides information about what students should do. So it crosses into that advocacy piece. So I've identified a problem and now I know what I should do. So our tagline, again, student created, was see even one, call 911. So it reminds students you don't even need to see all the signs to know it's a medical emergency. So that's an example of meeting students where they are, providing information they can use, help them be active bystanders, and potentially save a life. We have heard multiple times from students at schools all over the country that knowing PUBS meant they knew what to do, even when their peers were really resistant to call 911, where they had to overcome that barrier of other people saying, they'll be fine, don't worry. They're like, no, I know PUBS, and if I see one, I need to call 911. And then the last piece around communication with this particular example is, we had a clear, concise educational tool. So we really focused on the dosage. So PUBS cards go to every new student at move-in. There are mirror clings on the residence hall bathroom mirrors, magnets on the residence hall fridges, posters on the campus buses. And so, they've been so popular, we actually sell them to other campuses now. So that's just one example of communication, but also communication that had that advocacy piece underneath.
Yeah, so just a clarification. So when you built this, it was based on what you wanted the students to know. It's based on some assessment. It was relevant and useful to them.
Yes.
So it spoke to them in their language, because you said 4 is enough, 6 was too many. You made sure it was accurate and you made it memorable.
Yes.
So then the question here is, you did this on your campus, and I think you said this has been used across the country.
Yes.
So you know that other campuses have used PUBS and it works for them, PUBS?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting when, because it also has BAC chart information.
Right.
It's got, again, those tips. And then we have like a student athlete version that talks about how does alcohol impact your athletic performance.
Right.
So, that's again, like, where's that subpopulation? What's going to be the hook for them, meeting them where they are? As Tom mentioned, stages of change. Student athletes may not care what the social norm is for all student athletes, all students on your campus, but they do care that it can delay my recovery because they are really competitive. So when we can share that kind of information, again, it's meeting them where they are, what's relevant, what's timely, and a really usable format.
Yeah, that's yeah, and both of you cited the whole stages of change. You're grounding this in theory. Both of you cited that. Susie, you more from a student point of view, and Tom, I think your comments and answer to that question were more about the gatekeepers, the policymakers, I think you said something about departments or agencies. So it's really about, if you will, the policy folks. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's both, and I think that's the real important piece for me in my development throughout the last 25 years, is that it wasn't enough just to focus on the students.
Yeah.
For what I was trying to do. I look back and I feel kind of bad because I'm pretty sure I was pretty self-righteous, early on, and telling the vice president, well, you don't understand, this is what we have to do. We have to save lives. And I don't understand why you're, holding back. And that's the whole piece as a young professional or even a mid-professional, recognizing that the difference, there's this saying about you've gone from preaching to meddling. And, there's a difference between advocating, but then when it turns into shaming or making people feel less than, all you're doing is you're engaging their resistance. And at that point, you're not helping anybody because you're actually creating an impediment for change. And so when it comes to students, you have the self-righteous attitude of we need to do this. And what in fact you're doing is you're creating some resistance that may stay around for quite some time.
Right. Well, I think that, I think what we're doing and what our design was when we built this document, again, aspirational, trying to move our field along. Many of us did not have that sort of training in communication or advocacy, but this is where we are today and trying to push things forward. So if I may go back to Susie taking this next question. So as we built these 8 competency areas, we were fleshing out what each of them was. And when we got to the communication and advocacy area, we came up with these 9 elements. And again, all of this is available in the resource at www.preventioncompetencies.org. And so if you look at those 9 areas, Susie, is there 1 or 2 or 3 that jump out to you as the most important? I mean, our viewers can go to the document and look at all 9 of them. And some of them seem to replicate my summary of what you said a moment ago. But is there something that jumps out to you?
I mean, engaging students is always my go-to. I mean, that's what's kept me in higher ed for 30 years. And students really are the experts on how and where to reach them. I mean, they're your best method of identifying roadblocks, as well as the solutions. So as an example, we had an NIAAA grant focused on harm reduction and social norms interventions with fraternities and sororities. And so we expected that some groups might be hesitant to participate just because the focus was on alcohol. And they were just going to hear, they're trying to tell us not to drink. And we're really looking at harm reduction. But, if you can't engage with them, they're not going to even hear that part. We wanted to focus on how can we help your groups thrive. So, and some of them maybe had problems in the past and didn't have the greatest experience with the administration. So, just a variety of reasons. We expected some resistance from some groups. So we spent a a large amount of energy at the very beginning of the grant, communicating with those groups. Even really before the programs launched, because we had high expectations. We were going for 100% participation. When we looked at all of our Greek governing councils, all 4 councils, and all the chapters. So what we did is we decided, what would get students even to a meeting. So we're like, we're going to have a really nice dinner because food always works. And we had it in a more like exclusive location on campus that a lot of students maybe hadn't been to before. So that kind of drew people in. It was a little exclusive. We just invited 3 members of each chapter. And we had people stationed throughout all the tables. So we had some conversation about it anyway. And then, during dessert, we had a very short, concise slideshow. And we sent that out immediately afterwards. We really just said, hey, here's the basics of the project, harm reduction, trying to make your group stronger. And what we were asking of them, like, we're going to need a chapter meeting. We're going to deliver this program. And then here's what you're going to get out of it. So it's not just, oh, we're going to help you have healthier chapters with fewer problems. And again, we're speaking to our presidents who kind of get what a headache that is, all the other issues around that, and some tangible incentives, which was really what got their attention. So then we had some small group discussions at the tables, just for us in a smaller environment to hear like, what's going to be hard to get your chapter involved? What, if you're national, what might not go as well? Because we really wanted to hear from them. We wanted it to go smoothly. And they really had some good ideas about how to maintain confidentiality, how to track data anonymously, but keep the chapter data together. And they really helped us refine the incentive structure. So we then went to every chapter meeting. We had a short script, so we were, consistent. We had a grad student who was very close in age, and she did most of those outreaches. So again, there was removing that barrier of like, here's the grown-ups telling you what to do. So because I think of all of that communication with the chapter leaders, then with each chapter, and then delivering the program, we changed some things. We really did listen to them. We genuinely wanted to learn from them and hear their thoughts. We had really high participation rates. Like I double checked before this, it was 85% to 96% in a 2-year project. So 4 survey administrations, interventions, follow up. I mean, it was really incredibly, and I really do credit that to the very intentional communication, very clear, very organized. And we just wouldn't have been effective without really sustained and authentic communication and listening to our students. The second area that I would
before you go there, because that was great. So you don't think you over communicated? I mean, you because you got those results.
Yeah.
And it was quite an investment.
Yeah.
But you felt like it was essential to getting that good participation and good buy-in. Is that fair?
I would say it is essential. And we'd had a previous grant with our fraternity and sorority community. And we learned a lot from that because we didn't do as much communication.
Okay.
And we had good results,
Okay.
But it was nowhere near the rates that we saw at this. And our feedback, we did a lot of feedback loops because we actually had students delivering social norms messages in a structured presentation. We followed up with presidents. We followed up with our facilitators. And they all got, some of it was our facilitators got paid, and they didn't get paid unless they filled out the evaluation.
Yeah.
But we still, I won't say across the board, everybody that was, fabulous, but we got really good feedback, and people commented on that they appreciated how personalized it was. And I think that goes back to the communication.
Good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you have another example, please.
Yeah, and then the shorter one is the another area is that educating the campus community. I've engaged in some really fun work engaging faculty, so as a different population. As part of a campus-wide substance misuse prevention committee, we realized we didn't know a lot about what faculty and teaching assistants' knowledge of substance misuse prevention prevention
Right.
was, or
Right.
even their willingness to get engaged. So what do? We're like, well, let's do a survey. We'll find out. So we partnered again with an office, so our institutional assessment office, to conduct a survey and a series of focus groups. What we found were most faculty and TAs were very willing to refer a student for services if they suspected substance use issues. And they also, a strong majority said, I'd like to know more information about that. So our focus groups delved into that a little bit more. And the kinds of information faculty wanted and the delivery methods were kind of more of our focus there. So we created a brochure called Recognizing and Assisting Students in Distress, because faculty said, I don't want to be diagnosing. And we're like, we don't want you to diagnose. So that was a very, don't want to say fear, but that was a concern that they had, that they'd be asked to diagnose. So we were really upfront that this is not just about substance misuse. So it's very broad. We worked with our counseling center on the language. We have taken it, before periodically we bring back in front of faculty we were working with to say, does this ring true? Are these the kinds of signs you might see? So it's a very general signs of psychological distress in different ways people might see it. So for example, just a deterioration in the quality of classwork.
Yeah.
And then people said, I need a script. What do I say? I'm motivated. I want to have this conversation. I think there's something going on. What do I say? I don't want to mess it up. So again, we went back and said, well, we made a tiny little script that said, here are the kinds of things that are helpful. Here's how to have that conversation. And we reminded them, all you got to do is notice and refer. You are just getting them to the help that we already have with experts.
Right.
So, we really wanted to make sure current issues and ways that were up there. It's now kind of morphed into an email from the provost and student affairs. It gets sent, mid-semester. So again, the timing. So faculty maybe know the students well enough to notice a change, but also we're in the middle of midterms when stress might be elevated and students might have more concerns. So that's just another example with a different population of gathering information, get that assessment.
That's a good, yeah.
Hear from them, and then it's continued to evolve.
So I want to ask Tom the same question, but on the faculty piece, did you find a lot of the feedback across the same across disciplines? I mean, or did you see differences across disciplines? Whether it's social science faculty or more lab science, or just all sorts of different.
We didn't look at it that way.
Okay.
As far as the survey, and then our focus groups were a group of teaching assistants, a group of kind of junior faculty, and then a group of deans and higher level who had more experience at the institution. So we kind of looked at different points in your career, might the needs be different? And
okay, got it.
So that was kind of our strategy.
Yeah, but what I think one of the things that I would hope that our viewers would take away from this is the importance of engaging faculty, but with the communications realm, get out there and do the assessment for your campus, and you did it again by time in the field, but it can also be by discipline, but engage and see what works for your audience on your campus at this point in time.
Yeah, I think there's
not
this
to be
sense
afraid.
of,
Not to be afraid.
yeah, that, faculty maybe don't care about this,
Right.
or certain faculty, psychology, they'll care about this, but others won't.
Yeah.
And we really found across the board, it was really high percentages that faculty cared and they wanted more information. They just wanted it
Good. They were hungry.
in a format. Oh, I can find that. If I need it, I know where to find it.
Yeah, good. Tom.
Yes.
With this, Susie was answering the question. Any favorites? Anything jump out at you from our model?
Yeah, so I want to go back to that macro focus again.
Okay, good.
And the education is so important in recognizing multiple audiences when it comes to education. One of the things I've found is that too often the focus is on problematic behavior. And so we leave out a segment of the population that's doing really well, and we basically don't reinforce the behaviors that we're trying to cause people to engage in, because we ignore that. Like, so for example, we found that there was a group of students, like an overwhelming group of first-year students, who didn't drink at all in the past 12 months, like over 40%. And yet our campus shut down at 10 o'clock, and the only place to go to socialize was a private party or a bar. And so one, how did we communicate that there were alternatives? And then two, how do we advocate to create alternatives? And so, so much of the focus was on, we're going to reduce binge drinking, but we can reduce binge drinking by providing an alternative social outlet for students who don't drink. And so when we deal with these multiple audiences, it's really important to see the campus is not a singular issue, but to see that there's a multitude of educational opportunities, and that we want to take hold of all of those opportunities. We don't want to just focus on problematic behavior, because I believe what you water grows. And so if what we talk about is the problematic behavior in our advocacy and our programming and our funding is focused on, how are we going to reduce this or these behaviors, we're missing the boat. And then the second piece to that is recognizing the different audiences. So there are faculty, there's administrators, there's senior level administrators. So all of those audiences, you have to nuance the message to them as well, or else, if it's a singular message, then it's not likely going to resonate with all. It's going to resonate with some, but some isn't good enough for me. We need to try to focus on all wherever we can.
Yeah, so that suggests complexity. That suggests, like a universal message is not appropriate for all. I mean, there's a place for universal messages, but there's also, with the Institute of Medicine, for example, the universal, selective, and indicated. So some, as you said, some nuancing. Doesn't that get complicated? Doesn't that get hard?
Oh, it's very hard.
How can you help our audience with that?
Yeah, well, you have to give yourself permission to fail. You have to understand that not every message is going to resonate, and you have to be creative. To think about those multiple populations. Don't get caught up in just one. And this a real quick example. I trained pediatricians on screening, brief intervention, referral for treatment, and similar to what Susie said about faculty being so worried about diagnosis, these physicians would get so nervous about, well, what if I have a positive screen? What am I going to do? And I said to them, well, most of your screens are going to be negative. And so what you want to do is you want to ask, so why don't you drink? Or do you know there's more people that don't drink? There's more, 15-year-olds that don't drink than there are that do. And so how is it that you landed in one group and not the other? And so I use the example of blood pressure. When you go to get your blood pressure tested in the in the medical field, we only look for those things that are abnormal, right? So if your blood pressure is elevated, then there's going to be some kind of intervention. And so I really challenge these pediatricians, think of it in the opposite way. In this case, you don't want an abnormal finding. You want to find that there's not a problem, and then you want to reinforce that, and you want to get excited about it and say, wow, this is awesome. I'm proud of you. This is great. And more students, or most of my patients, are like you. Most of my patients don't have these problem behaviors. And so that's a real paradigm shift for preventionists.
So I'm going to push to the next question, but I'm going to frame it different for you, Tom. And I'm going to frame it based on something that I heard you say at the beginning of this about people change. People change when they see the need to change. Something you said something like that. So can you talk a little bit about that for any other examples about how do you help people to see the need to change, whether it's to support what the campus professional is putting forward in the prevention work, or whether it's individual in therapy. But how do you help? And Susie, I'll turn the same question to you in a moment. Any other examples, whether to that or anything else to bring to life communication? So Tom first.
Yeah, so I think it's important to give people respect, and one of the foundations of psychology of therapy is unconditional positive regard.
Yeah.
And so you have to start out from this place of I'm going to respect what you have to say. I'm not going to push back. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. And that's hard to do, believe me, especially when you think you're right and everybody else is wrong. And so it's really important to recognize that those different stakeholders have different perspectives.
Yeah.
And try to meet them where they're at. And lastly, I mean, this is like something you'd see on a motivational poster, but I try to remind myself as often as possible. There's this wonderful saying, it resonates with me, that grace is the face love wears when it meets imperfection. And if I can recognize just that, if you don't agree with me, even if I consider that imperfection, right, I can still be graceful, and I can still validate that viewpoint as just different. And so I think for certainly for people new in the field and are so excited about the work, it's easy to get kind of drawn into the dark side of the force.
Yeah, so with that, again, going back to our larger model, one of our topics, one of the other webinars is on strategic planning. And so communication and just what you've just said fits very well into strategic planning as we're trying to move our campus culture to a more health enhancing environment. Yeah. So Susie, other examples that help bring this to life.
Sure.
Communication.
And I love your comment.
Yeah.
Tom, I loved your comment about grace too, because I think that really is across all of these very important and in our communication. I think I'm going to go back to the micro level a little and look at communication with also for that marketing piece, because too often it's an afterthought. Like we have these great programs, intervention, and then we're like, we have to let people know about it. And we really, and this is one that I'm always reminding myself too, like communication has to be planned from the beginning, just like we should be doing with evaluations. It has to be part of that overall planning and not kind of an afterthought. So, just using an example of a program, and maybe this is, say, a program for students in recovery, but maybe they're not just the ones that you already know about. So if you've got a program that's recovery focused, you need to know for any program, well, what's the ideal time for students on my campus to learn about events? Some campuses might be like a month in advance. Others, it might be 2 weeks. Some, it might be like 2 days. So it's finding out when is it going to come up to people's attention so that they know about something and they don't hear about it later and go, wish that would have been really great. Maybe it's somebody who's just thinking about recovery. And the dosage is really important. So like 30 years ago, I co-presented a presentation on prevention marketing, and we called it Cutting Through the Clutter. And I'm like, wow, like 30 years ago, we didn't have as much clutter as we do now, right? There's so many apps, there's so many news feeds to distract us. So it's really difficult to capture and keep students' attention. So one of the things that we have found to be helpful is putting the students in charge of our social marketing. So we've created positions for pay. We've also had students who are getting academic credit through like formal internship programs, because the students are really in tune with how do we position our message? How do we make sure the message we're sending is the message that's received?
Right.
They can help us realize, okay, there's this meme out there that you do not realize that that's what you're saying. And I'm like, I mean, I can't be on top of all those things, but they're in the midst of it. It's their lives. So they help make sure we're actually reaching students with the platforms. Which platforms are we using? What kind of tone will make it more likely students will pause and engage with us? I do have a caution about, I'm not saying all professional companies, but sometimes professional companies might create materials that don't really hit home for students, right? Because they're not part of the culture. And cultures really, because every campus has multiple cultures. So it might be accurate, or it may not be that they really get the all the pieces that we're trying to create in like positive social norms, building the positive. A lot of times those companies might just go to the negative and the scare tactic-y things. So having students involved, they know how to navigate it. They know how to reach their peers. I guess my other caution is the class project format can occasionally be helpful. Sometimes you might get a student. What I found is if an entire class is doing a project, usually you'll get one that you can really work with. But just because the student is a consumer of social media may not mean that they have creation skills.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that might be important. And
Right.
and I guess the last piece is in addition to creating accurate and engaging content, looking at the format. So this is where I have the students teach me what makes a good Instagram post versus a story that'll disappear. Are you tracking all of your engagement data? Because some of that, depending on the platform, might disappear in just a couple of days. So there's some great online tools where you can have a spreadsheet, work with your students because they're learning that process as well. They're probably not in their personal feeds having a spreadsheet about like, here's our timing, here's the content, here's what the caption's going to be, here's what the engagement data is to help you, make decisions about future marketing efforts. So, and if it's a significant project, maybe the campus account will boost your message. So going back to the large sense, that's where that advocacy, like you can't ask your campus account to boost every one of your messages.
Right.
So it's being strategic. What is going to align with your overall campus messages where you might get more traction for something?
So
David, I
both,
wanted
go
to
ahead,
jump
Ben.
in real quickly
Yeah.
on a follow-up. So I think it's absolutely correct that students oftentimes in these classes, they'll create messages that they think resonate with us, not them. And so I've worked with marketing classes in the past, and basically there was nothing that we could use because it was DARE 0.20, but the other piece, which I love what Susie said, that we have to trust, and we have to let the students know we trust them.
Yeah.
But Gen Z, I have no frame of what it's like to grow up with a computer in my hand that was more sophisticated than the one that sent men to the moon, in 1969, and like to grow up with that, to never have used a payphone, and so it's a Gen Z. Everything we know about prevention, I think we have to rethink in light of Gen Z and technology and social media. And so that's one of my, I guess, criticisms of a lot of the things that we say are evidence-based or evidence-informed. It's evidence that's 20 years old, and it's evidence that doesn't necessarily take into account social media and so on and so forth, technology. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Susie, you
No, thanks, Tom. And
that was
actually,
good.
that reminded me, one thing I left out was because of earlier mistakes in doing this 30 years ago. I realize I walk into there and I know I'm the client. So this is a good learning opportunity for the students. And the client is going to start off, like I do the research for them. So I do a presentation on social norms, on the kinds of messages we want. So I try to set them up for success from the very beginning. And I think at first, I just had a faculty member, like, I have it written up and they weren't getting the nuances. And I get much better products by walking in as the client and saying, here are my guidelines, here's the guardrails, here's what I want. And then I'm there for the in-classroom presentation, and I can give them live feedback of, because, and then the faculty think it's great because they're really getting this good experience of, I don't sugarcoat it. I'm like, here's, this part's really great. This is missing the mark and here's why. Because they're competitive and they're great. So thank you. I'd forgotten to put that piece out there as well.
So just last formal question dovetails a lot of what we've just said. Susie, I'll start with you. What messages to any specific audiences do you have, or guidance regarding certain audience, whether it's student athletes, fraternity, sorority, student leadership, campus, faculty, administration, alumni, whatever, any specific things you want to say about audiences?
Yeah, well, certainly different audiences require different messages and delivery methods. And we've talked about some of that already, but
right.
For example, like for faculty, emails may work well, that maybe has a link to a short video about, maybe it's the brochure I mentioned. It's not something we've created, but maybe we do that it's a short video that walks them through that, gives them links to reference materials. It's like, hey, save this email for when you need it later. And it's going to be, it will get more attention if it's coming from their department chair or their dean or their provost.
Okay.
So who is sending that message? Our student
doesn't have to be you, is your point. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, no. I write the email and then they get to do the little spin, because I'm also making it easy on people. I'm like, they have a million things. I want my message to be consistent across all of these platforms. So I try to make it, I mean, I joke, I'm like, I care about this, pretty strongly. So I'm going to make sure that message is clear. Again, communication. Our student affairs colleagues may appreciate, a message that's tailored for them to forward to student groups. So say I'm recruiting for our peer education, or we have some big event, we're trying to get student engagement. So I write the email so that all they have to do, if they're like rushed for time, all they got to do is put their name at the bottom, cut and paste it, and it's ready to go. If they want to customize it, they certainly can. But I know the email will go out faster if my colleagues don't have to do any extra work.
Right.
And it's not that they don't care. It's that we all have a million things on our plate. And the students will notice it more, because instead of coming from me and they don't know me, it's coming from someone that they already have a relationship with.
And then you've already had good content. You had good content in there. You're using the appropriate words.
Right. And I'm like bullet points. The students have also taught me when there's long emails. So when we had university emails that were going out about high risk drinking events, again, because I had the relationship with a small group of students and they were our interns, and I'm like, okay, here's last year's email. How would you send this to your peers, knowing it's coming from the administration?
Yeah.
And they were a little hesitant. They're like, it needs to be Spark Notes. It needs bullets at the front that says, in this email are the following 5 things, boom, boom, boom. And then you're like, oh, number 5 is actually of interest to me, but you'd read the first line that'll show up in your screen, and then you can decide whether I'm going to read this really long email later.
Right.
And we changed all of our emails that way. So that was, again, we had that relationship. I think if we had just asked students and they weren't already engaged with us, they might not have told us that. And then they were so excited because they're like, the email came out and it's like we asked for it. And I'm like, you have more power than you maybe think you do. So, the less work people have to do in crafting that email, you'll have a message students are likely to notice. A lot of that tailoring of the message boils down to what's in it for me. So again, a faculty email might be like, have the student, they're disruptive, or they've checked out, or I'm just concerned about them. What do they want? So putting that right up front. Focus groups and surveys, can be really helpful in figuring out what that personal motivation is. I try not to assume that I know what motivates someone else. It goes back to those motivational interviewing practices. Find ways to listen to all of those many populations that you're trying to reach, whether that's faculty, students who are veterans, students are in recovery. What do they want? What services are missing? How do they want to get information from you? And then, engaging with your audience, whether it's students, faculty, staff, that'll help you understand what they're looking for and make sure you're kind of speaking their language.
Yeah, and connecting with them. Tom, same question. Any special messages or audiences that you want to say something about or to?
Sure, absolutely. I think Susie's done a really great job on the strategic side of change. And so I want to back the lens out a little bit on the structural side again. And so, I think part of this stems from my oppositional defiant disorder. I'm a really good innovator and disruptor. I've learned how to socialize, those things that used to drive my teachers crazy in middle school. But, when we look at structural change, so there's this wonderful saying, everything's impossible until somebody does it. And, it's that kind of attitude, that openness to allow things to happen and to think big. And I think back at the University of Central Florida in 2015, we made a decision for our law enforcement department to carry Narcan. And that was, they were the first law enforcement agency in the whole state, not just a campus police, but in the state. And it was in response to, there was someone whose daughter died of an overdose. And so they advocated, and our leadership, our president stepped up and said, what can we do? Not only a symbolic action, but what can we do that could protect students? Right. And it was probably 5 years before Narcan was actually used on a student, but it was such an example that led for the other departments in our area. And now almost every law enforcement agency in the state of Florida carries Narcan or naloxone. And it was because leadership made a decision to think big and to think outside the box and do something that hadn't been considered prior to. Right. And so I think for me, that would be my major takeaway is everything's impossible until somebody does it.
Yeah. So with that, just a transition to our closing, pointing our viewers to resources that we compiled. We did that for each of the 8 areas. So here are resources on communication and advocacy. A lot of what Tom, you and Susie have said today draws from that and draws from your experience. And so again, we point our viewers to those resources available. So any closing comments? We've covered a lot. There's a lot to think about. The complexity, the import of communication and advocacy, the importance of it, seeing the big picture, seeing the micro, and then knowing that, Thomas, you just said everything's impossible till somebody does it. Any closing comments, Susie?
The only thing I would say is it sort of taking the lens back a little bit is, change takes time.
Okay.
And you never know when the right conditions are going to emerge, just Tom, in your example, right? So I try to have I actually have a written list of like the projects that I would love to do. And sometimes it's just, you never know when the student is going to show up, or there's going to be the situation on a campus where the time is suddenly ripe and people are really interested. So I think that's how I also stay really positive is that, you just don't know when that door is going to open, and it's kind of be ready for the door to open, and don't get disappointed or disheartened when sometimes the door is closed for a while. I think it's trying to take the long view of just be ready when the right conditions emerge.
Yeah, good. And I think there was a sub theme is what you said is with what you just said is just being patient, just staying with it, being patient and persistent.
That to me is part of that advocacy, that you're gently bringing that up many times maybe. And then sometimes everything falls into place And it's, it's like it was meant to be. And then these wonderful programs
Yeah.
and evidence-based programs can
Yeah.
suddenly be very important.
Very good, very helpful. Thank you, Susie. Tom, any closing?
I think it's okay to get really excited about things that excite you, but also recognize if they don't excite other people, that's still okay. And
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
yeah, and find a support group as a young professional, or even a seasoned professional. You need to be able to say, this was a really great idea. I don't understand why it was, other people aren't getting it, but to have somebody validate you, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Not everything happens.
Yeah, your own support network, your own, if you will, informal advisors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because bitterness is bitterness is the opposite of advocacy. There'll be no advocacy that ever springs from the well of bitterness, only more bitterness. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I want to thank both of you, Tom, Susie. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for sharing your rich experiences across the board on communication and advocacy. You've really helped to bring to light this particular area, this main competency area, and its 9 little components. I also want to thank the Mid-America PTTC for their initial support for this whole competencies initiative. And once again, I thank Rich Lucy and his colleagues at the Drug Enforcement Administration for all of their good work, for their support of this webinar series, and for what they're going to be doing in the future to help reduce the harms and reduce the misuse associated with drugs. The work, as we complete this 8-part webinar series, the work now is up to the audience, the viewing audience, and your colleagues, your networks, to maintain your optimism, to build your knowledge, to build your skills and the applications through these 8 professional competency areas for substance misuse prevention. We thank you for your engagement, and we thank you for all the future work that you're going to help orchestrate for our college campuses, for the young adults, the returning adults, and the faculty and staff, and all of their future lives. So thank you very, very much.